A justice-focused approach in mathematics and science education. As a former engineering student who turned to the Faculty of Education years into my university experience, I have a goal of making sure that no other student ever feels forced to make the same decision. As someone who originally benefited from the injustice-filled math and science programs, as I fit the mold enough to be supported throughout grade school but lacked the features to be supported in university, the changes that need to be made are at the forefront of my mind each and every day that I learn to become an educator. It all leads me to this important question. How can I teach mathematics and science education with a justice-focused approach? What can teachers do in their classrooms and schools? Because right now, if we're being honest, these subjects are not the level playing field that we think they are. In fact, the way math and science are usually taught just creates more barriers than opportunities, especially for students of color, students with disabilities, and others who do not fit the traditional mold of what a successful math and science student is supposed to look like. In most schools, there's an unspoken idea of what a math kid or a science kid looks like. And if you don't fit that mold, it's really easy to get pushed aside. So many students get labeled early on as behind or struggling or just not ready. And from that point on, it's like they're stuck. They get placed in lower level classes, they're given work that's not nearly as interesting, and end up feeling like they don't belong in math and science at all. The problem here is that those labels don't just describe how students are doing. They end up shaping how teachers treat them, what content they get access to, and what kind of future paths they see for themselves. A big part of what's happening here is something called deficit thinking. That's when we assume students are lacking something, whether it's skills, knowledge, language, or behavior, just because of where they come from. This often shows up really early on for people of color and low-income students. Standardized tests and other tools tend to judge them so unfairly and send the message that they're already behind their white or middle-class peers. And that message sticks. This is exactly where the problem starts. These students aren't lacking knowledge or ability. They're often bringing different kinds of knowledge and experiences, often shaped by their culture, language, or daily life. These skills just aren't being recognized or used as assets in the classroom. If we want to start teaching math and science with a justice approach, we need to stop focusing on what the students don't have and start seeing the value in what they do bring to the table. Another huge issue in mathematics and science is seen often in courses like algebra. These classes are kind of used as a gatekeeper. If you do well in math, it opens doors. Advanced classes, college admissions, STEM careers. But if you don't, or if you're tracked into the lower level classes early on, it is so hard to catch up, and a lot of those doors start to close. And it's not about ability, it's just about who's given the chance. Research shows that students of color and students from low-income backgrounds are way more likely to be tracked into lower math classes, even when they're just as capable. Unfortunately, this kind of sorting starts so young, and it sends kids the message that only certain kids are math kids. It's not just unfair, it's so harmful. So I guess the big question is, what can we actually do about this? First, we need to push back against this deficit thinking. Let's stop assuming that students are missing something and start building on what they already know from their homes, their cultures, and their communities. Next, we need to rethink tracking. That means giving all students access to high quality and meaningful math and science experiences, not just the ones who test well or fit the mold. Finally, we need to start using math and science as tools to explore real issues, things like justice, fairness, and community. That means teaching the real history of math and science, asking big questions about the world, and helping students see how these subjects connect to their lives in powerful ways. When we talk about real-life math, we all just picture things that really apply. But we need to start focusing on helping kids see themselves in math. When we connect math to students' actual lives, we're creating an inclusive classroom that says, hey, you matter here. And not just in a, you might become an engineer kind of way, but in a, your story and you are valuable right now and right here kind of way. I think that Jose Vilson, who is a former middle school math teacher, puts it in the best way. He states this: a lot of people want us to focus only on math, and if we're going to use real-world examples, they better be astronomy or STEM, not race or the nitty-gritty of what Black and brown kids have to face daily. I think this is super valuable because it points out that his students, and our students, deserve so much better. They deserve math that doesn't just talk at them, but math that talks about the world that they actually live in. Another point that I think is so valuable was said by Robert Barry. All students need to use math as a window to see the world and a mirror to see themselves. Because let's be real, for way too long, math has just been this weird windowless basement room of education. No mirrors, no windows, just an X and a Y and trying to figure out how I fit in here. But when students, especially those of color, see themselves in the math curriculum, things change. The classroom becomes less about the right answers and more about right now. Another huge flaw with the math and science education programs are our tracking systems. That is the great system they came up with that decides by third grade who's going to take AP Calc in high school and who's going to repeat algebra over and over again. Personally, it feels like we're just sorting students like their laundry. When we track students by perceived ability, let's be real, by race, class, and language, we're limiting opportunity. We're not measuring potential. We're measuring access. We need to create pathways that are open, not gated. We need to let students show what they know in multiple ways, not just test scores. And we need to build more fair assessment systems that don't slap a label on a kid at age 10 and expect them to live with that for the rest of their lives. This will help the patterns change. Advanced math enrollment will go up. And then all of a sudden, we'll have students doing calculus that were deemed to not even make it into pre-algebra. With this, we need to rethink what it means to be good at math. Being good at math isn't just about memorizing the multiplication table or being the first to shout out the answer. It's about reasoning, problem solving, connecting ideas, and connecting those ideas to real life. All ways of knowing need to be accepted in the classroom. Knowledge is socially constructed, and you cannot have a social justice, math, or science program if we continue the way we're going. We need to focus on the strengths of all students, not just the gaps, and we need to stop pretending that the only right way to do it is to teach math on paper and pen and support the same mold of students that we have for years and years and years. There's so much potential in those students that we write off so early, and in a social justice classroom, we can incorporate everyone's ideas, support everyone, and know that there are other ways of knowing and doing that hold so much potential in the math and science fields. In this, we can include analysis of fairness, civil issues, income gaps, voting trends, housing equity. Learning about social justice can include learning about numbers around social justice. By doing this, we could make math and science seem like a tool. I know that the social justice approach isn't seen often in math and science, and it's not that popular, but all of this work is way too important to hide. Students of color, students in high poverty schools, they need math to be more than just equations on a board. They need it to be a mirror, a window, and sometimes a spotlight. It takes rethinking how you are taught, but you know what? I think that our students are worth it. Math and science have unfortunately become a place where the minority is pushed down, the classroom is filled with racism, prejudice, stereotypes, biases, and white privilege is flooding the boards. But it's time to respond, make a difference, and support the students that have been thrown into the margins.